When I lived in Chile, I was too American to be Chilean, so I didn't fit in because I was too American. And then I get to America and I'm like, hey, I'm home. And it's like, no, you're too Chilean. You don't fit in here. You're too Chilean. It's kind of like the whole thing, like too white for the brown spaces, too brown for the white spaces, sort of story of my life.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Cosmic Chats. We have the gorgeous Claudia Coloma. She is going to be telling us all about her life, which involved coming to America, being raised in Chile, then spending time in London, and then back to America, but this time Los Angeles. However, it has a little bit of a twist. If you want to find out, join us for the rest of the Cosmic Chat. So how would you describe the taste of a banana to someone who's never eaten one?
I would say it's goopy, but a little like chalky and goopy and sweet. Especially if it's like overripe, then it's like overly goopy and chalky and sweet. And I don't like them overripe. I think they're kind of gross. But when they're okay, when they're kind of like a little bit green, I don't know, they taste nutritious. It's like you can taste the potassium or something.
Most people don't like them green or a little bit green.
I like them a little bit more firm. Otherwise, they are just goopy.
I agree with you.
Ugh.
I agree. Good if you're making banana bread, which isn't what everybody did in quarantine, apparently.
Everybody made freaking, but okay, I did too. So I'm not gonna lie. I made some version of it. I made like kind of like cookies, muffins. I don't know what they were. I mean, I was experimenting. It tasted good. They tasted better than the rotten bananas, so I'm good. I'm happy. I'm happy with that.
Whatever you can.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure how your childhood was, if you had to deal with being locked, staying inside and eating whatever was in the house. When did you have your first existential life crisis as a child?
Well, yeah, I did grow up pretty by myself because I'm an only child, and my parents worked, and yeah, so I was kind of I would just let myself in and play by myself, and that's what I did. But I remember one time we were actually in downtown of Valdivia, Chile, that's where I grew up, and I was looking around at the people, and suddenly it occurred to me that what if it was all fake? Like I was the only real person and everybody else was like an actor who ceased to exist the moment that I did not see them.
And you were how old at this point?
I was like maybe like somewhere between 5, 6, or 7. I was very young. And yeah, I just looked and I said, what if like we're stepping into the drugstore, and the moment that we step out of the drugstore, it completely ceases to exist because I'm not seeing it. Therefore, it no longer needs to be there. So it's some kind of cosmic show that is being presented for me for I don't know what reason.
And did you ask any adult figures about that?
No, I did not. I think maybe years later, I told my mom about it, and she told me about a Spanish play called Life is a Dream. And it was a similar premise where the guy it was kind of like the to be or not to be speech, but the Spanish version of Shakespeare, right? And he was wondering whether everything that he was seeing around him was just an image, like a dream. It was not real. And I was like, okay, yeah, that was kind of like that, but it was more intense than that. It was more like the Matrix. It was more like it's being made up for my observational purposes. It's not a dream. It's being made up for me.
Did it have more of the Matrix feel or the Truman Show feel?
I would say it felt a little bit more Matrix-y like, because it was not that the other people were observing me. The people did not have a purpose other than to show up in my life and then disappear into the ethers.
And what then happened to your fantasy life in your head as a result of this?
Well, I had obviously a very active imagination anyway, because that was the only way that I had to entertain myself since I was an only child. And I just, sometimes I had kids over playing with me, but a lot of times I just played hours and hours by myself. So I just had to make up stuff all the time. But that moment, it did not feel like a make-up fantasy that I was making up in my mind. It felt like an epiphany. Like I went, whoa, what if, whoa. But oddly enough, like I started looking at people and started feeling this overwhelming love for them. And I don't know, it was kind of like, oh, they're here for me.
Oh, so it being all about you actually made you connect to unconditional love versus the other way around.
Yes. I was like, oh my gosh, wow. And I wanted to start crying, but at that age it's really embarrassing to cry. So I did not, I would never cry because I was like, a tough girl, right? But I was like moved, like by the fact that I just loved these people getting on the bus, and the crummy bus, the poor people, the old people, the ugly people, people that I normally did not think were interesting. I was like, wow, they all have a purpose.
It was an awakening sense of being in the now, because they're going to leave, and while they're with you, they're alive.
Yes. And then they just disappear. Yeah.
And when did this stop? Like, when did you stop having this, or are you still living this way?
Well, I stopped for years. Like I thought about it. I was like, wow, that was like cool imagination, but now, like that I've gotten into like spiritual teachings and like read The Power of Now and a whole bunch of things about manifestation and law of attraction and et cetera. Now I'm like, actually, I think I was spot on. I think I was spot on, because people do show up in your life. It's not that they don't cease to exist the moment that I end this call with you and you no longer exist, but you will be showing up in my experience however I imagine you will, however I assume you will. And I know this because in my way, I'm the creator of my own reality. You're the creator of your own reality. So I am showing up for you however you assume that I will.
But then how do you learn life lessons?
Because that's why we're here for each other. We're here to each other.
You do learn life lessons even though people are showing up the way you want them to.
No, not the way you want them to. Not the way you want them to. It's not about what you want. It's what you assume based on your unconscious beliefs that you have created about yourself and other people.
Right. So then how do you break down the cultural stereotypes or the dogma that you had been receiving through growing up with the assumptions being broken if everything is an assumption you've already preconceived?
That's when the life lessons come in. I mean, when you experience certain things that do not go the way you think they should, and if you can be still with yourself and be like, okay, wait a minute, what's going on here? And check in with yourself and be like, okay, I'm feeling this way. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling depressed, whatever it is about the situation. I ask myself, what must I believe to be true about what I think about myself or what I think about people or men or the world for me to feel this way? And that's when I realized, unconscious assumption that I had about men or people or myself.
Right. And that goes back to that assumption was based out of a story that you took on and absorbed of how things were. So when did you start to have more of these practices? You had this experience when you were a child, so there was a connection to something already. And then, am I correct in assuming you carried on a certain way until there was another shift?
Well, I think that, you know, as a child, I think like I would also like, I would see ghosts. And my grandmother saw exactly the same ghost in the same place.
Oh, so how old when you first saw a ghost?
Probably a little bit older than that, maybe like 7, 8, 9, around then.
And then you saw this, and then you told people, and then you discovered your grandmother saw the same thing?
Yes. Well, when I saw it very clearly, I think I must have been like maybe 11 or 12. I think I was a little bit older. And I told my parents about this. And of course, you know, my parents completely dismissed it. Both of them are scientists. So they were like, nonsense, right? But my grandma said, no, I actually saw exactly the same thing in the same place.
Then it was your mother's mother or your father's mother?
Yes, my mother's mother.
So then she got a stern look.
My mom, you know, basically was, I think my parents, again, both the scientists were like, okay, children and old people. You know?
Children and old people, they've got nothing to lose by telling the truth.
Yeah, but to them, it's kind of like, they're both kind of like, you know, in their own little mental world, you know, where, you know, and they knew that I was very imaginative and I was always making up, you know, stories and things like that. I was never lying, though. I never made up stories as in lying. I never lied, but they knew I had a very creative imagination. So they're like, okay, yeah, whatever. But I was like,
then there was no fear because you had acknowledgement from another guidance figure.
Yes, an adult, an authority figure, somebody that I looked up to, you know? So after that, I was like, wow, I did actually see a ghost. There are actually ghosts and I can see them.
And did you find more came to you after you acknowledged it?
Not then, because sometime around when I became a teenager, adolescence, I went through this shift where I went into the other direction where I was like, no, that's all nonsense. And that lasted until like my late 20s, where I was just like, no, this is, you know, the world operates according to physics. I must have imagined it. I must have been seeing things. You know, it's all logic.
What was the triggering point that had you switch to more of a scientific mind?
I don't know if it was puberty or the influence of both my parents. You know, my dad went back to the United States. I was alone with my mom for a while. So I was very close to her because we were alone. We were very alone without my dad. And then we moved to the United States. My dad had become a born-again Christian. And I kind of tried to get into that mentality. And then sometime in college, I was like, this is nonsense. All of it is nonsense. Religion, spirituality, all of it.
Your dad was going to America with the premise of you guys would follow him, correct?
Right. And we did, but it took a while. It took a while to get my mom's papers in order.
I was born in the United States. A few years?
It took over a year. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But it, you know, they were very close. So it was really hard on her. And I think like emotionally speaking, I was just tied to her. And I don't know, just being an adolescent in puberty and just being focused on, you know, do I look cute? How cute do I look? The boys, do they like me? Does he like me? Does he not like me? I think he likes me, but does he want to be my boyfriend? I don't know if he wants to be my boyfriend. Maybe I want to be boyfriend. I want that guy as my boyfriend. Maybe I don't want this guy as my boyfriend. You know, that was like what I was thinking about, you know?
Right. So you didn't want something that would make you even more strange.
Right. Absolutely not. No. I wanted to be popular. I wanted to be cool. I wanted to.
Right. We don't want that rejection.
No, absolutely not. Not, you know, so, you know, the moment, you know, like from 12 to like, I don't know, 18, 19, you know, it was just like all about how can I fit in here and how can I be cool? How can I get the boys to like me and the girls not to be mean?
How old were you when you went to America?
15.
15. So you finished American high school?
Yes, I finished high school in America, and which was also very hard for me because I came in and my English was not that good. So I had an accent, even though I was really cute, so the boys liked me, but they didn't know what to make of me. So it's kind of like, I only wanted to be as weird as anybody else was weird.
Right.
If being weird was cool, then I was going to be weird.
Right. And did you find that's where you gravitated towards?
No, I did a little bit, when I was in Indiana, there was a bigger crowd, but then when we moved to a really small town in Nebraska, it was all about fitting in. It was like, there was one game in town, the cheerleaders were the cool girls, the football players were the hot guys. And, if I liked anybody, like they would assume that I was crushing on one of the football players. And I was like, I'm not even into him. What are you guys talking about? I like the weird guy who's in the band, that's why I was crushing on. But even I was too weird for him, so I was like, okay, I was like, I don't like this. I'm being left out. Everybody thinks I'm weird. So I'll just, dress more normally, behave more normally. It's not cool to be weird here. So,
Right. And then you towed the line and you went away to college, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what did you study?
Theater with minors in music and art.
And so did you find that much easier to be more expressive of who you were?
No, because I was going to school in Nebraska.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I went to university in Nebraska and absolutely not. And I think it was during history that our history professor said, God is impossible. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. That's why I believe in it. And I was like, no, I'm with you with the first part. It does not make any logical sense. It does not. None of it does. And I was like, so either we're going to believe in the history and the physics and the logical aspect of this, or we're going to believe in all the mumbo jumbo that we have no evidence for. And I was like, I'm a highly intelligent person here. I have a really high IQ. I have a really high GPA. I'm going to pride myself in the fact that I'm a person of intelligence and logic, and I'm going to dismiss all this nonsense. So that, I think it was a thing of pride, where the way that I was being recognized at that moment was due to my intelligence and my high grades. And I was like, that's what I'm going to stick with. I'm going to stick with that aspect of myself.
So you then said it was it late 20s and 30s that you sort of reverted and started investigating
spirituality? Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what brought that about?
California.
to fit in, right?
Actually, no, I went to an acting class, and it was no, because I had studied at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts in London. I had gone to the drama studio in London. I had moved to London for a couple of years. I couldn't stay there because I'm obviously a colonial. I don't belong there, and they know it, and I knew it, and so I had to leave.
So you went there and you studied for how many years?
3 years.
3 years. So you were there for 3 years on a student visa, yes?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Right. And, to get extra training. What was it that made you feel different that you couldn't stay there?
Because my visa was up and they wanted me out of the country.
But that was it. It was simply a visa issue. It was not because you didn't. Okay. All right.
Yeah. No, actually, I felt more comfortable there than I had felt anywhere else in the world, because when I lived in Chile, I was too American to be Chilean, so I didn't fit in because I was too American. And then I get to America and I'm like, hey, I'm home. And it's like, no, you're too Chilean. You don't fit in here. You're too Chilean. It's kind of like the whole thing, like too white for the brown spaces, too brown for the white spaces, sort of story of my life. Mm-hmm. Don't belong here, don't belong there.
And then in London,
it was like, I don't belong here. And they're like, you're right, you don't belong here. It's like, finally, we're in agreement.
So it was really sort of, calling the elephant in the room, as it were, which sort of had a sense of, oh, okay, good.
Okay, good. Like, at least I know where I stand finally. It's like, yeah, I don't belong here. Great, but I choose to be here. And they're like, great, welcome.
And then when you moved to Los Angeles, did you find that similar element, or because so many people moved there, you felt it didn't matter?
Yeah, it kind of didn't matter. I think like the first couple of years that I was in LA, I really wanted to be in London, so I was not really enjoying it. And the whole thing with the acting class was very frustrating to me because I had already studied so long in, and so much. And then I come here and it's a completely different style. The business is totally different. And I'm meeting with casting people who are like, you're interesting choices, but you're trying way too hard. And I'm like going, of course I'm trying way too hard. I have years of training. What do you want me to do with all these years of training? Just be. And I'm like, what is that? Just be. I'm like, what is that nonsense? So I was
then you went to find a guru.
Yeah, pretty much. I went to an acting class who was like
told by an agent, I bet.
No. Actually, it was not.
Say yes.
Okay, yes, sure.
It's funnier.
It wasn't. Maybe it would have saved you some trouble if it was actually an agent, but no, it was not.
Guru agent, I love it. Yes,
it's an acting guru, but it definitely was like an acting guru kind of person, because I mean, I really enjoyed it during the time. Like now in retrospect, I'm like, okay, well, you know what? That was a very essential step for me to take.
Yes.
He said that the only acting book that he recommended, that he required as reading for his class, was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, which is not an acting book at all. But he said, you read this book, it will teach you everything you need to know about how to be an actor.
And did you find that to be true?
Yes. Yes. And that's when I started shifting. Because I was like, wait a second, this actually works.
There's no specific technique in that book, but it is about how to be in the moment, which is what all the acting schools is about. And it's very different in England than it is in America. Absolutely. But both completely valid for a technique. So now you've explored all these various spiritual ideas, and you naturally found you were aligning more with what was your intuition from when you were younger.
Yes.
And so what do you do to try and keep yourself stay centered now?
Well, I keep reading books that I feel that resonate, and there's some people that I follow on YouTube, but mostly what I've been doing, other than I do my morning meditation, during the quarantine.
Well, wait a second, we're not going to jump over that like that.
No?
You do a morning meditation.
I do a morning meditation. Yeah.
How remarkable that you're on a meditation channel. No, so those of you who don't really know what Aware Meditation Inc. is, who are joining us because of our fabulous guest, we are a nonprofit organization that is bringing large teachings of a self-sufficient meditation practice, which was only ever designed for busy people with busy lives. It's not a concentration practice. It's a non-directive, which can give the physiology 2 to 5 times more deep rest in 20 minutes of sitting down on your backside. And we have a fabulous ebook fundraiser. It's called Vedic Meditation Stories. The link is down below. You can get it off of Amazon. And it's the only publication with true stories from people who learned the practice and how it changed their lives. It's not edited simply because we wanted their true essence of their voice to come across, and your mouth will probably drop to the floor. And this is so any page that's open, there's a little donation to the nonprofit, not much, but for people to know that there are many practices of meditation. And if you think that meditation doesn't work, all I say is this: either you haven't found a teacher who can speak your language, or you haven't found the right practice yet. That is simply it. Or you think meditation is something it's not.
I think that's accurate.
It's like going to the doctor and the doctor saying, just do some exercise. Well, are you training for a marathon, or are you slurping on your Frappuccino walking an extra block? Right, it's still exercise, but
Yeah.
it's got such a broad range. And him
Right.
are very friendly and inclusive, but we teach a practice that can be self-sufficient. So it's about finding one's own inner guru, which is pretty much your experience, right? Listening to that inner voice. Now, if you had something you wanted to say to yourself back then, knowing that you had to adapt in America and then adapt again, what would you tell yourself that might have relieved any suffering?
Maybe that I was right when I was right.
So you might say, because that could come across as kind of a little bit arrogant, but really like that your inner intuition, or listen to your inner intuition.
Yes, that your intuition was spot on, and you could have stayed there. I mean, there's no could, should have, whatever. I think that we experience what we have to experience. I think everything is perfect. Ultimately, I think everything is perfect, because I had to go through that experience of like not fitting in and blah 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 blah, to really find my voice and who I am, and come to the self-love and self-respect that I have for myself now.
But we always want to be in a place for those who either have children or for the next generation, that there doesn't need to be as much suffering when there can be learning information when one is a child, that yes, your intuition is right. However, you do have to listen to the teacher because you're in a social construct of a class and you're learning how to communicate and how to, which I think is the biggest lesson of all, how to funnel one's own intuition into the current reality without seeming like it's attacking you and having to squelch who you are.
Yes, and also it's very hard as a child because often you don't realize, and it's almost like you're not really allowed to consider the adults around you to be wrong.
Right, and that absolutely, there's one of my favorite movies is about a boy, and it's an English movie, and he's 10 years old, and he is just figuring out that adults aren't really who they say they are, and he's going through pretty much an existential life crisis. And if we started to have more education on the EQ and our own voices, there would be less general suffering in the world. And I think we'd be able to be more humanitarian as I want to say species. So thank you so much, Claudia, for joining us. We've had a wonderful existential chat today. She's going to remind you to like and subscribe to help the channel. And if you have any comments and you want to have a back, please just pop it down. We'd love to hear from you, and do share your wisdom. Maybe you've had a similar experience that Claudia had when she was younger as well. So it will help her feel even less alone. And with that, we hope you will join us next time on the next Cosmic Chat.